So you're thinking about playing Baldur's Gate 3. Maybe you're a returning player that needs a refresher or a completely new player to the series. Don't worry, I'm here to break down the basics. Yo, what's up guys? It's Derp here with the Baldur's Gate 3 Beginner's Guide for new and returning players. If you like what you see here, don't forget to like and subscribe. So some things to remember and some important changes. In Baldur's Gate 3, the narrative choices that you make matter a lot. Almost every narrative decision that you make, including everything from when and where you engage in combat to what you tell the goblin at the gates, holds some sort of impact on the game world. There are tons of times when choosing not to fight early ends up leading to a massive battle later on, or vice versa. Killing somebody you think is evil at first might end up working against you somewhere later down the line. Your choices are super important in everything that you do. Narrative decisions, combat decisions, everything. Power gaming is encouraged, but not in the usual way. While Baldur's Gate 3 is a turn-based RPG that focuses heavily on combat, the devs at Larian have done an amazing job of making variety and player agency the star of the show. Numbers are everything, just not how you might think. Rolling a bard with amazing charisma and stacked dialogue skills might, like intimidation, deceit, or performance, can help you avoid extremely difficult battles or allow you to talk your way out of sticky situations. However, you might find the few mandatory bosses a little overwhelming if you don't have a combat-oriented character. On the other end, rolling a strictly combat-focused character might make the bosses significantly easier, while also preventing you from options that can lead you to immense wealth or abilities that help you avoid extremely difficult battles altogether. The key is to either have like a jack-of-all-trades character or a very balanced team. Going too hard in one direction, RP or combat, can drastically hinder your character down the line, and it kind of prevents you from power gaming one way or the other. Role-playing is not only viable, but can become overpowered based on what your choices are. As stated earlier, your choices are important, and they start early. What character you choose to create will impact not only how you play the game, but will impact the story and setting itself. A human bard that focuses on combat will have an extremely different experience as a tiefling bard that focuses on dialogue skills like deceit. Not only will some dialogue options change, entire encounters will change, including cinematics and combat encounters. Choosing a non-combat role for your main character in most games is a huge setback, as the supporting cast usually isn't as good as something custom made, but Baldur's Gate 3 takes that idea and kind of turns it on its head. I've been able to avoid a lot of combat situations and encounters entirely just by playing an extremely stealthy rogue or a bard who can talk his way out of anything. In some situations, a character built specifically for role-playing will outperform the combat classes by a wide margin. So, I mean, a good example is who cares how strong your character is when you could just ask the dragon to help you out instead of attacking you. Not only did you avoid the fight, but now you have a sweet dragon buddy for your next big encounter. Stuff like this is entirely possible with the right combination of race, class, stats, and skills. This encounter is not a spoiler. I made it up, but stuff like that does happen in the game. True to other Larian games, Baldur's Gate 3 is extremely vertical. So that means that seemingly useless skills and abilities can drastically impact combat and dialogue options. A great example of this is Featherfall. Because of the verticality and environmental nature of Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of the more combat-focused encounters will heavily involve height or the elements as obstacles. A spell like Featherfall or Jump can give your team access to vantage points in areas that otherwise would be impossible to reach. There's the classic Grease and Fire combo. You cast Grease in a wide area, and then you can cast Create Fire or Firebolt into the Grease, and it causes a huge explosion. Two simple low-level spells can be combined to light one instruction on fire or fill a room with fire and smoke. Once the room is clear, a quick cantrip like Create Water can extinguish the flames. Don't sleep on any ability or any skill. While some are more useful than others in a general sense, some will really shine in tricky situations. Others will help you avoid entire situations entirely, such as Charm. Then you have Destructible Environment. Be careful with your fireballs or casting Grease and Firebolt. You might just destroy the ladder you need to loot that magical staff up the hill, or you might break the stairs. You could destroy a lot of objects and terrain in the environment. If somebody's hiding behind a barrel, you could break it. You can and will lock yourself out of parts of the map by destroying stairs, ladders, doors, etc. So be careful. The environment can be your friend or foe in Baldur's Gate 3. To add to this, lighting is also important. The player's sight is actually taken into account during combat and dialogue. If your party is blind, you may not be able to see a group of enemies sneaking up on you, or you might be at a disadvantage on your attack rolls. Spells like Light, Create Fire, and abilities that give your players visibility in the dark can be extremely helpful. So light those torches and campfires unless you're being sneaky, then turn off all the lights and blind all your enemies. It will put them at a massive disadvantage unless they have dark vision or immunity to blindness, which a lot of enemies do. To add to this, terrain can be a friend or foe. Wet grass, explosive barrels, fire, other terrain elements can drastically affect combat encounters as well as the dialogue and narrative. Be careful when casting lightning around water. You might just zap all your allies as well as your enemies. Which brings me to story and plot. Baldur's Gate 3 is a nice mix of old and new. While there are hits of nostalgia from Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, the story is mostly new. Larian has done an amazing job of telling their own story while pushing the series into the future and capturing the nostalgia for the long-time players of the series. So new players shouldn't have any hesitation. If you're just jumping in at Baldur's Gate 3, you're going to get an amazing experience. There's also romance. Romance is available to all genders, all classes, regardless of alignment. Instead of a separate romance meter, everything is about the approval of the individual party members. Negative approval ratings can cause players to leave your party and kill any chance at romance, while positive approval ratings and various narrative choices can lead to steamy romances. So please be careful to treat your party's members with respect and in a manner that they approve of. Some of them like being talked down to. Just don't rush. This is my biggest piece of advice. Don't rush. The level cap is currently only set to 12 for the full release, and leveling slows down significantly as you progress. Don't rush. Take your time. Explore. Get into trouble. Fight your way through dungeons. That's what this game is all about. It's all about the experience, not how fast you get through it, not how fast you get to the end boss. It's not a game for speedrunning. I mean, you can, but it kind of ruins the point. Right, there's over 200 hours of narration, and this game is amazing. Just get what you can and what you will out of it. It's a ton of fun, but everything that you do is going to start with your first choice, and that's making your character or picking one of the standard characters, the origins characters. So creating a custom character in BG3 is somewhat similar to early Baldur's Gate games. However, there are some very specific differences. New and returning players alike will enjoy the near endless customization options for characters. However, those of you looking to just jump right in have the choice of just jumping right into pre-made character choices that give you control over one of the NPC companions that you would normally find later on down the line. So for custom characters, there are more than 30 races and sub-races with 46 classes and subclasses. This means there are a ton of variables for character creation, but don't worry, it's not overwhelming when you simplify it. Races were one of the big changes from earlier BG3 games coming into our earlier Baldur's Gate games coming into this. Unlike Dungeons & Dragons and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, races do have specific bonuses, but their stats aren't really static per se. When you pick your ability scores, you can go in and tweak pretty much whatever you want up to a certain point. No matter what race you choose, you'll be able to shift your attributes around once you get into the attribute selection. So races aren't necessarily stat locked, which allows for a lot more variety and racial options for every class. It's more of a matter of what you want to play and their racial abilities versus what's best. To top this off, you can always respec your character later down the line to better suit your playstyle. If you don't like playing a wizard and you would rather play a warlock, feel free to respec at almost any point. The only thing you can't really change is your race. So be careful choosing a race early on. Make sure you actually like the one you pick versus what you think is best for your class. You might just end up changing classes early on and feel like you're not as powerful as you could be because you picked, air quotes, the wrong race. So don't worry about that. Pick what you think is going to be fun, what's going to excite you, and what you want to roleplay as. Because there's no real best race in the game. At least not as much as there was in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. The game is more about your choices and how you play than creating the best character for every situation, because that's literally impossible. Sometimes a character more focused for roleplay and dialogue is going to shine way more than a combat-focused character, and in those tough boss battles, a combat-focused character is going to shine way more than a role-playing character. It's all about what you're in it for. So with that in mind, let's get into classes. The martial combat classes are Barbarian, which is good for a melee DPS or tank. There's Fighter, which is super versatile and can be melee or ranged DPS, or they can be a really good tank. There's Ranger, which is a versatile melee or ranged DPS, or a pretty decent off tank if you pick the Night Ranger, because it allows them to wear heavy armor. Paladin is the prototypical tank. They have heals, they have buffs, they have auras, they wear heavy armor, and they use big giant weapons. They could also do a lot of melee DPS and some self-sustain with their healing. Rogues are the fast-moving, fast-attacking melee or ranged stealth class, and they come with a ton of skills, which makes them highly versatile. They're one of the most necessary classes in the game, in my opinion. You need somebody with stealth and lockpicking and stuff, otherwise you're just going to miss way too much. And for the caster classes, you have Sorcerer, which is a hard-hitting caster with a somewhat small spell pool and some kind of chaotic gameplay elements if you choose to go down that path. They're kind of like a wizard, except they have a more stripped-down spell pool in lieu of being able to do extra damage and having some added effects. I don't want to spoil it, but some added effects to their casting. The Warlock is a damage and debuff focused caster that can hold their own in melee. So they're pretty much good. Like if you want to play more of like a Spellblade, I would go with either a Warlock or a Wizard. The Wizard is a versatile caster with a massive spell pool that can learn almost any spell. And they have some some weird mechanics where you have to prepare your spells in advance. And you can kind of change them at will, but once you get into combat, they're locked in. And then you have the one stereotypical healer class. There are a bunch of off healer classes like Bard and Druid. Even Wizard can be a good off healer, or a Paladin can be a good off healer. But the Cleric is the stereotypical healer. They can also go tank or debuff and buff machine. They do have some ability to do decent burst damage and DPS using their spells, but healing is their main focus as well as tanking. So they can tank and heal. They have a decent sized health pool, can wear heavy armor, and they can heal a ton of damage. And then you have all your jack of all trades classes. You have your Bard, which is the prototypical jack of all trades. Master of none other than the sweet tunes. They're usually used for the party face or an RP class. They're going to be able to get you through all those dialogue options, all the narrative options. If you have a Bard in your team, that's where you want to go. They can help you avoid a ton of combat if that's the route you want to take. And then you have Druid, which is also a jack of all trades, except more nature focused. They are a versatile caster or a frontline fighter, depending on your build. You can do a caster build that is more focused on battlefield manipulation, like slows, roots, stuns, stuff like that. And then they also have a lot of narrative choices, like speak with animals and animal handling and stuff like that. And then they also have a pretty decent pool of damage spells and decent healing abilities like Good Berry and cure wounds and stuff like that. So they're pretty versatile. Bard and Druid are some of my favorite classes. I also really like in this version of Baldur's Gate, I also really like the Monk, which is a fast melee DPS with self-sustain. I forgot to mention that in the martial classes. But yeah, the Bard, Druid, Monk are really good, but you can pick whatever you want. Make sure to choose the race and the class that you think will be fun. That's the most important thing. This game has an estimated time of about 200 hours or more for just for straight gameplay. It will take a long time. And if you're having fun you're going to breeze right through it, right? So take your time, pick a character that's going to be fun, make it about your choices, and you're going to have a blast. Baldur's Gate is an amazing series, and Larian has done an amazing job. I would not be surprised if this won Game of the Year. So don't think about this as being the best character and making the best character to win the game. Make it about making the character that suits you the best, and it's about how you want to play and your choices. I hope this guide has been helpful. I love to hear about what characters you guys plan to make below, so please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. If you want to help out the channel, be sure to join the guild, follow the Patreon or YouTube membership links below. As always, love you guys. Have an amazing rest of your day. I'll see you in the game. Peace.